Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, a boy and his blob, Animal Crossing's huge new update, and a Nintendo hardware roundup. Today's election day, which is important and stressful, but we're just going to talk about fun stuff. It's dangerous to vote alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers. I'm joined as always by my co-host Mark Mitchell.
Hey Patrick, how's it going?
Going well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let's check in on the weather real fast.
Okay, a little bit warmer than I was expecting
today. A little
today.
bit warmer. I think it's supposed to be in like the low 70s, high 80s high 70s, low 80s.
What are we talking about?
For the rest of the
The
week.
numbers are confusing me. I just got off the phone with my girlfriend who's in Chicago right now. She said that it was going to be in the 90s next week.
Here?
Here.
Oh,
I know. I do not want that.
This is horrible.
What are we supposed to do?
It's supposed to be cold at this point. Look, I've lived in LA for 4 years.
Right.
And
so we're old
every
pros
year
now.
it's progressively gotten warmer.
Yes.
Like the winters have gotten warmer.
Yes.
This is bad news.
I remember I guess it wasn't my second like real winter here, saying that I was doing a lot of hat on improv, which just meant that I was doing a lot of shows while wearing like a knit cap.
Right.
And that was happening in like November and December.
Yeah.
And that felt right, that it was cold enough indoors that I was wearing a hat.
Because we'll be 2 weeks in to like halfway through November and it's going to be 90 degrees.
That doesn't seem right.
Which is a great excuse.
Right.
For me to stay inside and play, catch up on video games that I have not been able to play.
Do you feel like you are amassing a back catalog?
Well, okay, here's the thing. Let's just move right into like what we're playing.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Because
Because
Mark, what have you been playing?
I was supposed to be playing Dragon Quest VII, as discussed last week. It's downloaded. It's sitting on my 3DS.
Now, when you say you're supposed to, this is an assignment you gave yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I
just want us to be clear.
Yeah. I was supposed to be playing it. So I could talk about it this week. I have not even had a chance to like open it up.
But you have downloaded it.
I have downloaded it. It's sitting there just waiting. And my boyfriend is going out of town starting tomorrow, which is anyways, it's complicated.
Right.
Timelines are complicated.
Just pulling back the curtain here for a second, where we normally record on Monday and you hear us on Tuesday, or whenever you download this, or you never hear it.
Yeah.
But today we are recording on Sunday evening, so if huge Nintendo news breaks on Monday, sorry.
Yeah.
We missed it.
Yeah. So on Monday, which is, if you're downloading this on Tuesday, which is last night, as we're recording it, is tomorrow. And if you're never listening to it, never happened.
Right.
Because if a boyfriend gets on an airplane and no one's around to hear it, does it really happen?
I would argue that it does.
He's going out of town and he's going to be gone for a month, which is very sad, but means that I'll have a little bit of extra time to like really dig into Dragon Quest VII. So I hope to talk about it next week. Have not played Dragon Quest VII. I did download the Monster Hunter Generations demo for the 3DS.
Have you played any of that?
No. Whoa, sorry. I played the demo.
I mean, if this is just where we're going to talk about our experiences downloading stuff, because I have something to say about my experience downloading something.
I downloaded it and I played it.
Okay, good.
Have you played any Monster Hunter before?
No, they always seem super intimidating.
I don't know if this was the same demo that was at E3 this year. Like I didn't. They had a small section where you could, with a few 3DSs set up, where you could play a demo for Generations. But I didn't do that. But I played this one. This is also my first time doing anything Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
And this stuff is I think the controls are complicated.
Oh yeah.
Like by the end of it, I was feeling like kind of comfortable with it. But
feeling good playing it.
Yeah, but it was, that was like 5 days ago. And I think going back now, I would already forget how I'm supposed to do stuff. And it's not like super complicated, but it's like, okay, in order to dash, you have to hold L and, like B and the circle pad or whatever.
So I know my understanding of Generations is that it lets you play with the systems from like every previous version of Monster Hunter. So I don't know if that's actually in the demo or not, but in the full version of the game, I think there are different ways that you can select different ways to actually play and therefore like control the game.
Yeah, I don't that like
maybe not in this.
No, I mean I think the demo is very like streamlined where it's just like here's Monster Hunter, here's an introduction to Monster Hunter. I've heard the Generations from people who have played the series a lot. I've heard the Generations is the most like they've fixed a lot of the things
the fussiness.
Yeah. And so it's the most streamlined. And I could see myself getting into it, but it is still just a little too the barrier for entry. Like when I first turned like in the first few minutes, they have you like battling and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But then it's like, okay, get out and like roast the meat. And it's just like, oh, there's so many small systems in this game.
Yeah.
That it just doesn't really appeal to me. Like in general, I don't love games that have so many like individual systems.
Right.
Like even in RPGs that involve crafting, I very rarely craft because it's just like I don't want to deal with that.
Right. I'll find the powerful weapons and then I'll level up and like I'll engage in the skill tree or whatever.
Right. Or like powerful enough. Like I know people like in Fallout 4 you could build settlements, and it was like I only did the very minimum of that I had to do to get past the story. So that's how I felt about Generations, where it's like, oh, this looks appealing, it like looks beautiful for a 3DS game. It's like there's like little like cats, like it's very cute,
that like fetch items or like supplies for you or something,
and they're just they've kind of become I was it in this game? It might be in this game where they can wear like Mario and like Luigi outfits.
Yeah, I think Monster Hunter has actually a pretty good history of, especially recently, of incorporating Nintendo branded stuff, because there's also like Zelda costumes and stuff like that are part of them as well. So
overall, I'm glad I tried it, but I don't think I'll buy the full version. But who knows? Maybe if there's a Monster Hunter Switch, which I'm kind of assuming there will be. I assume that
it would be crazy for them not to, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because the only other option really is for them to put it on.
That sounds great, by the way.
PS4. And they're not. I don't think they're going to do that because so much of Monster Hunter, especially in Japan, is like the portability. Yeah. So Switch makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I have not been playing much this week. Other than Animal Crossing, and that's because of something that we will cover in the news. Mark, let's get to the news.
We've both been playing. I mean, I've continued to play, but you kind of got back into your town with the
right.
The Animal Crossing New Leaf Welcome Amiibo update.
Yes, that's right. Nintendo, like they do, announced a direct, and then like 12 hours later, put it out. Mark, did you watch this direct?
No, I didn't. I didn't have time, but you did, right?
It's bonkers. It features a Japanese man dressed in like hippie clothes, hanging out at an RV park with someone wearing a full body KK Slider outfit. And then they just like talk through the features of the update.
You're right. That sounds bonkers.
It's so bizarre, but totally worth checking out because like it's just
sounds
insane.
Fun.
And we'll later in the news here talk about another just absolutely crazy direct. But yeah, so I went back to my town, and even before downloading the update, was like, okay, I gotta re-meet these guys and see how they're doing. I realized just a couple minutes before recording that I blew off Kabuki, who I was supposed to meet at my house at 3:30.
Oh man.
So I really hope he was like mad at me when I came back, and he was like, I thought we weren't friends anymore. And he's like, well, maybe you can invite me over so I can see your place. And so I said, okay. And he said, give me a time after 12 o'clock and I'll be there. And I was like, oh, God, okay, I've got a thing and it should be done about 2:30. Okay, 3:30, that'll be a perfect time. I was in the car / had forgotten about it entirely. And so I've now stood up Kabuki. I don't know if we can ever be friends.
Do they move out of your town without warning you? Because I've had people, the citizens be like, oh, I'm going to leave in a week. And then I'm like, no, don't go. And they're like, oh, you convinced me. But dude, if you like...
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not... I don't play a whole lot of Animal Crossing.
Right. I've been deep in it for the past month. I mean, every day I've been checking in on them.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about what's in this update. And then talk about our plans or our intentions for Animal Crossing going forward.
Great. So there's there's an entirely new section that they added, which is like a campground and RV park. Harvey's campground and RV park. And a Harvey it sounds like the in the direct.
Yeah.
The guy that's dressed in hippie clothes,
right,
is dressed like Harvey's dressed. And is Harvey a monkey? I'm having a hard time telling.
This is a great question, Mark. Let's look it up.
Okay, yeah, but I think Harvey's a monkey. And so anyways, it's a new section of your, you have to go out of your town to get to it. I was about to explain where it was in my town, but I realized people choose different maps.
Mine's
so
off to the right.
Helpful. Mine is as well, so maybe
okay.
they're all
maybe
off
they're
to
all
the
off
right.
to the right.
But it's right next to my town hall.
Yeah, mine kind of is too.
Oh, okay. I wonder if we chose the same map layout.
Who knows?
But and so yeah, it's a completely new section. You go over to there, and I guess the big thing here is different.
He's a dog.
Oh, he's a dog. Okay, it's hard to tell.
Special dog character that debuts with the New Leaf Welcome Amiibo update.
Okay, and so Harvey's there, and he sells unique items that you can't get anywhere else, and you can't use bells to buy them. Just like on the island, they have a different currency.
Bells are the general currency of Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
If you're not hip to Animal Crossing.
Yeah, and he uses a new system called Meow coupons, which stand for mutual exchange of wealth, which I think is just very funny.
It's adorable because it sounds so hippy dippy.
Yeah. But then the other fun thing is that other animals from other villagers from outside of your village stop by in RVs, and you can talk to them, and they're selling special things as well. So that's really cool. That's the biggest thing. I can't remember. I finally figured out last night how you earn Meow coupons.
Yeah, how do you earn Meow coupons?
You have how you have your town ID or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So you go to that in your menu, and now there's 2 parts of it. You toggle to the initiatives, and so it tells you catch 5 bugs, and then you earn
the Meow coupons.
Right. I had no idea, because in the explanation that your secretary gives you,
right, Isabel.
Isabel. She's like, oh, okay, here are Meow coupons, and you earn them by doing things. But so I was like, oh, okay, I'll just catch fish. And then I went to check the Meow thing, and it's you don't have any coupons. I'm like, how am I supposed to know?
Not even the 10 you started with?
Oh, you have the 10.
Right.
But I mean, I didn't earn any new ones. But finally, I figured it out last night.
So you have to tell it that you want to earn for a specific task, for a specific initiative? Or?
So it's just there's lists, or you go to that screen and it tells you what the initiative is for the day. So the first one, and I guess it may depend on the day, but the first one was just hang a piece of clothing up in your house. And then you do that, and then you go back to the cat machine, and
which is actually that's another acronym. I forget what it stands for.
I forget what it stands for. It's a coupon automated teller.
Who knows? Yeah, that's pretty good.
But nobody will check. But
there's no way to know.
So that's really fun. I guess the other big things are you can now demolish your town and start over, but demolish it. And if you have had your town for long enough, you can get Tom Nook to
appraise
your town.
Right.
And then he's and people are getting millions. I saw
millions
Twitter,
of bells.
Millions of bells. 15 million bells was the highest I saw.
I'm not going to have him appraise my town.
Mine hasn't been around long enough.
Well, I mean, mine has been around for a long time, but it's also in a severe state of neglect at the moment. And I don't want Tom Nook to be like, I don't know, 13 bells.
I'll have to be honest. Like for selfish reasons, I'm a little bit annoyed that the campground is like what the thing is, because as part of my, you know how you can build town public works projects.
Yeah.
I built a campground.
Oh, so you already sort of have it.
I already have one, and so I'm like, ugh, do I demolish it? But I put all those bells into it. Anyways, it's a whole thing I'm dealing with. Of course, like the big, it's in the title is the amiibo functionality.
Amiibo.
Have you been able to use it at all? Because I have an old 3DS, and amiibo's dead to me.
I have been able to use it.
Have you used it?
No, I have not.
Great.
But Mark, as long as we're talking about amiibo, I have a present for you.
Oh no.
Yes. So prepare yourself.
Oh, whoa.
I got you the Wario and Waluigi.
And Waluigi amiibo.
I got you the pair. They came out on Friday.
Amiibo's no longer dead to me.
Yay!
Thank you, Patrick.
Unfortunately, these two amiibo are not compatible with so far.
It doesn't matter because my 3DS isn't either. This is great. The Waluigi one, I could not. This will be the end of my.
I assumed as much.
No. I mean that only because what more could I want than Wario?
No, your world is complete.
And Waluigi.
I like their shoes.
Oh yeah.
Waluigi, like if you can't picture it in your head, which why would you be able to? Waluigi has bright orange shoes, and like they're kind of pointy, like an elf's shoe would be. And Wario has green shoes that same shape.
This is actually the first time I've noticed that Waluigi's like the symbol on his hat
is an upside down
L.
L.
Is an upside down L.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because Wario's is an upside down M, but it doesn't. It just goes to show that Waluigi is not that well thought out because it actually makes sense for Wario. Well, it makes less sense for Waluigi's L to be upside down.
So the prefix wa in Japanese means like a bad or evil version of something.
Oh.
So turning Mario into Wario
makes
is like kind of a clever portmanteau of the wa prefix and Mario. So like Waluigi in Japanese makes perfect sense as like the bad version of Luigi. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work as well in English. So in English, we're like, Waluigi? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's no good way to fix that because you can't be like, Waluigi, like take out the L.
Yeah.
Because that's what, it'd be like if they were like, W Mario, W Luigi, right? It just doesn't. Anyways, all this to say, this is amazing. Did you get for yourself as well?
Oh, I've got a full set of
Oh, okay, great. I was genuinely worried.
Oh, no. Don't worry at all.
I'm not opening these because I'm desperately hoping they'll be worth a significant amount of money in the future.
This round of amiibos has been very easy to come by.
Ugh.
Just so you know.
I'm just going to throw these right in the garbage.
There you go.
No, I'm just kidding. These are great. Thank you.
What else can we do in the New Leaf Welcome Amiibo update?
Well, maybe because I was not amiibo focused before I had any, and now that I am, maybe like my world will change. My entire apartment will be filled with.
I mean, you could also just get the cards.
No. But what I'm saying,
all right.
But what I'm saying is, since I didn't watch the direct, are you able to buy specific villager amiibos and then add them to your town? Because, it's random who will come to your town.
So, yeah, you can summon the various... So, anyone from the Animal Crossing line, and I think there's a dozen or so of them. Let's see who I can see from right here. I got Lottie, Tom Nook, KK Slider, Isabelle, Digby, Timmy and Tommy Nook, those llamas, Reese and Cyrus, the owl... in the museum, and the lady version of the owl. I'm losing a lot of these names.
There's a lady version?
There's a lady version of the owl. Kix is in there. The like little skunk with the hat.
Is Rossetti in there?
Yes, there's a Mr. Rossetti.
So there's a lot of them then.
Yeah, I think it's an even dozen.
And so then what happens when you do it?
Then I think their RV comes. I don't know.
Okay.
The other ones that I know for sure, all of the Splatoon amiibo summon Splatoon Splatoon characters.
And not like an Animal Crossing version of them, like just straight up.
I mean, it is sort of an Animal Crossing.
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean like a villager like wearing the outfit. I mean like,
Right.
oh, it is like
It is an Inkling.
Yeah, it is Wolf Link.
Yeah. Yes. So that's also all of the Zelda amiibo, which is a little bit weird because the Zelda amiibo right now come from different lines. Or I guess at the moment they're only from they're different lines. Because there are the Smash Zelda amiibo. There are 5 of them: Link, Toon Link, Ganondorf, Zelda, and Sheik. And then the Wolf Link amiibo is its own thing and summons a wolf, like a Wolf Link.
Well, that just seems like a random one to me in general.
Sure.
Like, out of all, like why I'm guessing because it was recently released is why they decided to go with it.
Well, and one of them will summon Epona as like an Animal Crossing villager.
Oh, see, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah, it seems super adorable, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. And also, Mark, if you ever get the like little hockey puck thing to make your 3DS amiibo functional, you may feel free to use any to peruse my library of amiibo.
I'll probably take you up on that.
Good.
And then the other thing you can do is using your 3DS camera. It's like an augmented reality type thing. So you snap photos of like your apartment or basically anything in real life, and then your villagers show up in those environments.
Right.
And you can share those somehow. I'm assuming there's no real like share functionality, but they definitely get saved to your 3DS.
Yeah, so I mean, you take a picture with your phone?
I don't. And then this is the big one for me. This is so nice. Is they made a small change where you can now shake a tree and hold a one-handed item. So like a net or a fishing pole, you can still shake a tree, and it makes when beehives fall down and bees chase you, it makes it so much easier to like capture the bees.
Oh, because it doesn't take a second.
Yeah, and it just makes it generally more convenient because you don't have to put the item away, shake the tree, and then get the item back out again.
Which is a silly thing anyway. Like, come on, game.
Right, I know.
Meet me
So it's
halfway.
like it's so nice that they like made that small change. Anyways, it's a huge update for a 3-year-old game. Like a crazy huge update.
Yeah, it's sort of insane and unprecedented, right? Like, why? I am having the hardest time like trying to figure out why they're doing this.
I am assuming that Animal Crossing is, like Isabella is a very popular character in Japan.
Sure.
And I'm guessing New Leaf just dropped to $20. And so I think they're just like, this is one of our evergreen titles that already sold well and will continue to sell well as like new people buy 3DSs. And so it's worthwhile for us to invest in like adding a lot of new content to this game.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people are playing the game again.
Yeah.
Which is so cool that there's like a reason for everyone to like check in on it again. And the game is obviously more dynamic when there are more people playing it because then you can visit each other's towns and whatnot. And also just like then you're talking about it, right? So yeah, I think it's super smart way to keep a game that requires engagement from everyone. To do like it's something I wish they could do for. It probably didn't sell well enough, but for like Triforce Heroes,
right?
That like no one's playing it anymore. But if they did something to get people interested in playing it again, then there would be an audience again.
But which is cool. But the thing for Animal Crossing specifically is that they didn't charge anything for this. This was a free download to everybody. So it's like, yeah, people are re-engaging with Animal Crossing New Leaf again, and maybe, but it's not like any of those people are necessarily paying for anything to get it. So it's just like a fun thing that Nintendo was like 3 years later. All right, let's do a major content update for Animal Crossing.
I think Animal Crossing also appears on most outlets like top 10 3DS games lists. Like I think it, even though I have kind of a hard time getting into them because they're a little bit slower and a little bit more like directed at your own pace. But it is a well-regarded game.
Yeah.
And like people will recommend that you play Animal Crossing.
I will say the longer, and I came in really liking Wild World. That was the last.
Yeah.
And I've own City Folk, played it for a little bit, and it just didn't work for me.
Mhm.
But I will say that the more I play New Leaf, the more impressed I am
Yeah.
at how much content and how even before this new update, like
Yeah.
how much content in it and how it just like new things keep presenting itself and little things that I'm just like, oh right.
Yeah, it
Like,
seems like
I'm-
it was already a bottomless pit of content.
Yeah. So super impressive.
Here's some more.
Yeah. And so I guess like the next major direct that we're all expecting is like the Switch one on January 12th.
So I did want to talk about that for a second. I'm not sure that we will see that in the form of a direct. It may be an event of some other
Oh, sure. 'Cause
kind.
it's definitely a live event that they're streaming.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I'm assuming it seems like it's taking place in Japan, but I'm assuming they're going to invite press from all over the world to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll basically be like an E3 conference of old,
Right.
or like a Space World conference,
Right.
but specifically for the Switch.
January 12th. What day of the week is that? Do we have any idea?
We have the means to find out.
I'm just curious what our response is going to be to it. Like, do we do something right away? What is our responsibility to the January 12th? January 12th is a Thursday.
Great, that works out great for us.
Does it? I
Right?
feel like that's terrible for us.
Oh, right, because it's like right
Because it's like right after. Yeah, we may have to do.
And maybe we'll do a special.
We'll do a special just for you because we like you, and because we will want to talk about it.
Oh yeah, we will. So it's kind of talking about the Switch. The rumor this week was that the Wii U was going to end production.
And done. Close the door.
Yeah,
Close the book. Throw the book away.
but debunked.
Debunked. Not true.
They're not ending production of the Wii U quite yet.
Great. I mean, I don't know. I like my Wii U. And man, I hope they do a big price drop on that thing.
Well,
soon.
I think that two things. One is I don't think we're ever going to see a price drop on the Wii U, like Nintendo.
Interesting.
Like I think because they're selling, it's going to sell what it's going to sell at this point. So there's no incentive for them to be like, okay, and
I sort of disagree on that. Like, I think if they could,
mm-hmm.
way drop the price on Wii U, because I think if anyone was thinking about buying a Wii U now, they're not going to, and they're just going to wait for a Switch.
Right. I think that's what Nintendo wants. I think they'd much rather get people owning a Switch, which is their platform going forward. They want that install base big. They don't really care about the Wii U at this point. I mean, like, people buying Wii U's is just gravy, but
then why not take it out of production?
I'm assuming it's because they feel like they have or will be getting enough orders that they have to produce a few more.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, I guess this would have been, I think the first time Nintendo had, if this were true, this would have been the first time Nintendo had ceased production of a console. Well, that's not true. That can't be true. Because the GameCube, they like vacillated. There were times when they stopped production because they had too many.
Yeah.
But this would be the first time where they just like ended production months before the Switch came out.
And I think the reason this rumor like got out and then proliferated as much as it did was that I think people are really into the narrative of the Wii U failed.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's fine. It hasn't been a success, but I think people are really eager to put like nails in the coffin of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how unfair that is. I think by any metric other than maybe quality of games,
sure,
the Wii U has been a huge failure.
Right, but I think people are more in love with that narrative than they need to be.
Oh, sure.
Like,
people take joy in it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. It's the joy I object to.
Yeah.
I just don't want people feeling joy.
In happier news, and something I'm actually excited for, is Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King finally has a release date for the West on the 3DS. It's going to be out on January 20th. It includes like new playable characters, quests, and an alternate ending, and a quick save feature, which is great.
Yeah, quick save. Man, What did we do before quick saves? Where we would like walk into a dungeon and battle through a dungeon for 45 minutes.
I mean, in a lot of games on the NES Classic Edition, that's like one of the main benefits is you can just do like save states. You don't have to, because a lot of those don't have save functions.
Oh my god. A lot of them don't have save functions, and then Final Fantasy's on it as well.
Right.
I'm gonna use save. I'm gonna use save states to finally beat Star Tropics again.
See, there we go.
Yes.
But yeah, so Dragon Quest VIII, which will be really fun. I can download it and not play it because I guarantee I'll still be playing 7 by that point.
I'm looking forward to weekly updates about how you haven't turned it on yet.
Yeah. Pokken Tournament, because we got to get a little bit of Pokemon news in here.
Gotta.
The arcade cabinet is gaining another playable character, Cryogunk.
I think Krogunk.
Oh, that makes sense.
Croak with gunk in the middle of it.
Oh, I was thinking it was like Cro-Magnon. Like
no, he's a frog.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Crunk. How do you what?
I think Krogunk.
Oh, okay. So he's joining the lineup on November 10th. So this. And no word if they're going to update the console version. I'm guessing at this point it didn't sell well enough to merit the effort, but I am interested that the arcade version is apparently doing well enough that it is worthwhile for them to keep adding characters.
Yeah, that's a little bit insane to me because early reports about the arcade cabinets in Japan was that it was not that people were having them removed from arcades because somewhat like a decently skilled player could get 45 minutes of play off of 1 credit.
Wow.
Which means you're not making any money on that machine. But yeah, that they're adding, this is the third DLC, or I guess I don't even know what you would call it, the third extra character in the arcade edition.
And it's the second since we've started doing the podcast.
Which isn't even that long.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess maybe like, just like it is with cable TV here, it's like arcades are niche in Japan. Niche, whatever.
They're both good.
In Japan.
The Nintendo niche.
Yeah. And this has become just like a profitable tiny little niche in there as well.
Yeah, I think it is also possible that we will see this game on the Switch.
Do you think so?
Maybe.
I mean, I guess it's possible.
I don't know why you wouldn't necessarily. Like,
well, if it's easy
if it's easy to do.
If it's easy to do, it just like adds, it's another notch in the Switch's belt. So yeah, and what is this name?
Namco Bandai.
Namco Bandai.
Right.
Yeah.
Used to be Bandai Namco. Now is Namco Bandai. Has never been. What did you say?
I can't even remember.
Bandai Namco.
Yeah. My money's on them also doing a port of Smash, that they're working on a port of Smash 4.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, if it's easy to do, and it seems like it probably is, then why not?
It'll also depend on what the install base for the Switch ends up looking like. I don't think it'll be necessarily a launch window port.
Sure.
It could be like a year later.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, if they do decide to do it, then it's just another title that can fill a gap, or fill a like a release window where it's like, okay, we're not going to have a gaming drought for 6 months because we're going to throw a Pokken tournament in.
Right. I also think a fighting game is a pretty good kind of game for what the Switch is.
Yeah.
Like I think that's fun couch co-op on the go, and it would also be fun to play against your friend where you take your thing there,
especially if there's some sort of like download play like we were talking about, so
perfect.
2 people didn't have to own it.
Hold on, did we cover this last week? We talked about, is Mario Party, does it have download play? We are interrupting the news. So the interruption sound.
It doesn't have traditional download play,
but
what you can do is one person has to own a copy of the game. And then if let's say you have 3 friends who also have 3DSs, they can go to the eShop and download a special, basically it seems like version of the game.
It seems like a full free version of the game.
But they download it for free. And I'm guessing it's because the amount of data needed to play was exceeded the amount that download play is capable of, or made sense for download play. But that's really cool.
Yeah, and there's no limit to as long as one person owns the full version of the game. There's no limit to the stuff that you can play on the free versions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So seems super great. Now let's go back to the real news. Ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-ba.
You'll have to explain this one to me because I saw a little bit about it, but I didn't watch the direct. Is the Miitopia, which is coming to the 3DS in Japan on December 10th, but probably isn't going to get a release in the West.
Doesn't look like it right now. Who knows though? So Miitopia looks like a, you know that there's one of the Mi Street Pass games where it's like an RPG and just like everyone takes damage and dies.
Like the dungeon crawling thing where you like the more Miis you have, the further you can get into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it looks a little bit like that, but an actual RPG.
Oh, interesting.
It's unclear from the direct, which is the most Japanese thing I've ever seen, by the way. It's a 7-minute long video, and we don't see any gameplay of any kind until like 3.5 minutes in. It's the video starts with a woman waking up and going to work and being treated like garbage while she's at work. A lot of like regressive gender dynamics happening in this thing. And then she comes home and we see that she has like a dream, or like her 3DS glows and takes over her head or something. And so we see the game itself is Mii's, so we recognize the people from her office, and like her boss is the villain. So like it looks sort of neat, but I don't know. Like it's not clear to me because the whole thing is in Japanese. So it's not clear how deep the story is or anything like that, or even how deep the exploration elements are. But the combat looks to be a fully formed kind of like 16-bit style, even though it's all done up in like the Mii's, but like, you know, of the Final Fantasies 4, 5, 6 era combat. So like there are like things where they team up and where they cast spells and different character classes that everyone is. And you can be like a pop idol or like a wizard or all these things.
Do you know, is it an eShop exclusive or is it like a retail release?
I don't know. I mean, it looks like a full game though, not like a $10 even free thing.
I have to be honest. I find Mii's generally unappealing.
Yeah, me too.
So like just like the physical design of them, so an entire game revolving around them is a repelling concept.
Yes, I agree with that. But also, like, I want to know who these people are that have a bunch of Mii's on their 3DS. Because like the only time I made a bunch of Mii's were when I first got the Wii and people were coming over and playing it, and then, you know, we'd play tennis and then be like, oh, let's make Mii's for a while. And then everyone that I was going to school with, everyone that was hanging out in my apartment we were making Mii's of them. But like as soon as I'm by myself on my 3DS, I've got like 4 Mii's on that thing.
Oh, but what I'm saying, but it makes sense to me, especially if it's Japan exclusive, because if you get them, if it uses the ones you acquire through Street Pass, then if you're Street Passing a bunch, you would just like collect. You know, because even from just traveling, I have like 30 that and I don't travel. I haven't like, but I have like 30 that I've gotten from airports. But if you were like on the train and getting a lot of them, then maybe it works that way.
That feels so much less meaningful to me than like Mii's of people you know and love. Like, this is someone who rides the train with me and is also playing Monster Hunter or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Mark, I'm not wrong.
I'm not saying you are.
Let's move into the new releases for the week.
Great. So the big one on the 3DS on November 8th, which is today this is being released.
Election Day
is Harvest Moon Sky Tree Village. It's the newest Harvest Moon.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting to me because it's not depending on when you got into Harvest Moon,
right?
When you're like, it's the new Harvest Moon, it's not.
Maybe it's not.
It's like not the Harvest Moon that you have played in the past, which is now called Story of Seasons.
And that's Natsume?
Natsume is the one that owns Harvest Moon, the name. So the games that are being released,
got it, as Harvest
Moon are not the
sure. So that's properly branded, but the people who actually made it are the Story of Seasons people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I really like Harvest Moon, but I've only played one game, which was like Mineral Town, which was the one on the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
I loved that game.
So it has been a long time since you played.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't speak to any of the more recent ones, but watching like the trailers and stuff for this new Harvest Moon, it does look like they're kind of doing their own thing with Harvest Moon now.
Okay. Well, we'll probably neither of us are going to grab that game, I don't think.
Probably not.
But I'll watch some video of it and see what it's like. My Harvest Moon, Super Nintendo baby. That was mine. OG Harvest Moon, just called Harvest Moon.
I think that Mineral Town is based on that version.
Oh.
With expanded content. This is based on almost no information.
Good. Okay.
But what
else is coming out?
But I
this
think
week?
That's true. The NES Classic. NES Classic Edition drops on Friday.
Yeah. Still can't pre-order it.
No, and we're gonna do our darndest to get at least one.
Yeah. We were talking about this before. Maybe neither of us are working on Friday.
Yeah.
When this thing drops. So it might be time to go scoot around LA until we find some Nintendo Classic Edition.
Well, the reason I want because I want one for myself, but it's just such a great Christmas gift.
Yeah, it's kind of like a no-brainer Christmas gift.
Yeah.
I can't think of a person that I couldn't give this to.
Right. So I'm hoping to get more than one, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess me too. It just is kind of as many as I can.
But hopefully we'll be able to talk about it next week, our experience with it.
Yeah, and if I end up not getting one, I was about to say I'm gonna buy all the games and play them anyway, but that's not true. I'm gonna wait.
But I would be tempted to try to get one from like a third-party seller.
Yeah, I think I would.
If the price is
depending,
if it's like a reasonable markup, I'd be willing to go in for that.
What? Let's ask this right now. What is your reasonable markup? They retail for $59.99.
I would pay $80.
Yeah, I would too.
Like $20 more.
Yeah.
And your setup here is actually pretty ideal for it because there was a lot of talk this week about how short the cables are.
Mm-hmm.
But you could pull it off. I think it would be a little. My couch is a little too far back from my TV.
Yeah.
For it to work, so I might have to get either that third-party wireless controller that's being released,
mm-hmm.
or a longer power cord.
My plan for it is to get a long HDMI cable, and just keep the system itself next to the couch and just plugged in over here, and then run an
smart.
HDMI. Yeah, because then the only way to navigate out to the game select menu is by hitting the reset button.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just have that right with me on the couch. That's my plan.
Yeah, your setup's ideal for this thing. So hopefully we can grab one.
Yeah, hopefully we can grab a couple. Mark, let's move out of the news. Oh, you know what? I've made a mistake. This is what happens when you produce your show live. Mark, let's move out of the news. All right, that moment of silence is because I was digging up a clip for us for this next segment, which of course is a normal segment on our show. It's time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or group of performers don't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So for the duration of one performance of 433, Mark and I will talk about something that is not Nintendo related, effectively not playing our instruments and fulfilling the contract of 433. So Mark, let's start this recording and talk about not Nintendo. So we both have airport pickups.
Yeah, that's the reason why I have an airport drop off. You have an airport pickup.
That's true. They're different tasks.
Yeah, that's the reason why we are recording on Sunday versus the regular Monday night.
Right.
Are you going to LAX?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you also going to LAX?
I am. What time are you?
Sarah's plane lands at 7:30.
Okay.
When does Clement?
We will probably. It's complicated because I'm working out by in Culver City right now.
Yeah.
And so I think he's going to meet me out there, and that'll probably be around 8. And
okay.
Then, but we'll be ships passing
in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Quite literally.
Quite literally, especially now that it's daylight savings time is over with,
I
or
know,
just
it gets
started,
dark
or
at 4:30.
whichever one is or is not happening.
Do you prefer the airport pickup or the airport drop off?
I think I prefer drop off because the timing is less complex.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about like the
You don't have to check your phone.
You don't have to
like,
check your phone?
see it. Yeah.
right, and you don't have to be like, okay, I landed. I'm waiting for my baggage. Okay, I'm making a loop around LAX. Oh, my baggage isn't here yet. Okay, like I'll loop around again. See you in half an hour.
See, the trick is though, you just got to wait at that Carl's Jr. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, smart.
It's like right off the. So when you go to the airport, do you get off at Aviation or do you get off at Sepulveda?
Well, which way do you go?
Well, I'm on the 105. Are you
Oh, okay.
Are you coming from the 405?
I usually get off on what are the options?
So there's Aviation,
Uh-huh.
which is the first one as you're coming from the north. And then there's Sepulveda, which is like kind of just the straight shot to it. Aviation is a little bit more. There's like some construction adjacent to
Where's
it.
like the tunnel where you get off? And then the
Sepulveda.
tunnel. Okay, I get off on
Like right by
Sepulveda.
the Square Enix building.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to take Aviation. I don't know why. Other than as soon as you turn on to, is it like Airport Way or something like that? There is a Carl's Jr.
Well, I know
right
the
there.
Carl's Jr. you're referring
Yeah.
to.
So I've waited in that parking lot many a time, even though there are signs saying like no loitering.
Right.
But like if you're in your car, no one's gonna say anything to
Right.
you. Or go in and you get some curly fries. Like it's a good time.
Oh, so you wait there and then you wait for
For the
whoever-
text saying I'm ready.
I have my luggage and everything.
Right.
And then you
and then I can be there inside of 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's smart. I might have to do that. I mean,
in a month when you pick
right,
when you
exactly.
pick them back up.
Burbank is the dream.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Burbank is the dream.
I mean, Burbank is a fantasy though, because like, where does Burbank fly to? Like,
Right.
where it's not useful.
And then the cost.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
And if someone is flying out of Burbank, they can park.
Yeah, that's
it is
true.
cheap and easy.
It is. It's both of those things. It is like surprisingly cheap. But if they're gone for like a month, I'm not going to be like, oh, like,
Well, that's
park
true.
here.
A month is a little intense.
Yeah.
Does he have a car?
Yes. So it gets complicated.
Are you gonna have to juggle that too?
No, the reason why we're meeting in Culver City is that we're both going to drive to like his friend's place, who lives in a black hole in the LA area apparently, where there's no street cleaning.
Street cleaning in LA, if you don't live here, is excessive.
Yeah.
It happens every week.
Twice a week. Oh, or like every week
Yes.
on one side of the street.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. But every street.
Every week.
Every week.
When I lived in Chicago, it would happen once a month.
And it's still so dirty.
Yeah. Well, yes. It's a dirty city. We live in a dirty city.
Street cleaning is exclusively for them to get parking tickets.
That might be right. That might be right.
I mean, because again, they could do this same amount of street cleaning once a month, and it would be. I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe if they didn't, just like the streets would be so much dirtier that we wouldn't actually be able to drive through without holding brooms out of our windows to like push debris away.
We would just be like snowed in, but with filth.
Yeah.
I have so the street cleaners usually come by before the period during which you're not supposed to park there. So I have gotten a ticket on my car for parking in the street cleaning area after the street sweeper has gone by. So like it's gone by. Wait, let me get the sequence right.
Before it's gone by.
Before it's gone by.
So
no, after. So it say like there's no parking there from noon until 2.
Okay.
It comes by at 11:45. My car was parked there fine, no problem. But it just has to like go around. So like it's already done that.
Yeah.
And then I get a ticket later at noon because my car's not supposed to be there, even though the damage is already done.
I'm telling you, that's the illusion of the street clean. Like street cleaning. It's ugh. But anyways, to answer your question, so that's what we're doing. He's parking his car at some good for this
Yeah.
person lives in an amazing area of LA where there is
Yeah.
no street cleaning.
Oh, and thank you. We were accompanied today by Armin Fuchs on piano, not playing his instrument. Mark, I think that about gets us to our topic for the week. So let's get into the topic for the week. And this week, we're doing a little bit of a hardware roundup.
Yeah, we're a multi-part.
Yes. I don't know when we're going to do part 2. Do you think does that happen next week?
I don't know.
Okay, well we're just committing to part 1 right now. I think we're doing this for 2 reasons.
Mm-hmm.
First reason is I want to just have a fun, light conversation. You're standing in line, you're going to vote, people are harassing you, or you're at work and work is terrible and you want to have something fun. So let's have fun conversations. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we are coming up on release of new hardware. And I think it's important to have the context of all the other hardware that's come before to understand what the Switch is and what's at stake here.
Sure, and how it fits into Nintendo's larger history.
Yeah, because they have quite the history and quite the legacy. The company itself is actually way older than anything we're going to talk about here. They made like playing cards and stuff. So we're going to skip ahead to the first electronic entertainment systems.
Yeah, I mean, because we're skipping like the game. We're gonna skip like the Game and Watch and like their arcade entries and stuff like that. And we're gonna go straight to really Patrick and I's first experience.
Yes,
which is the Nintendo Entertainment System is where we're gonna begin.
Right, and it just if you're an anxious type that needs to know like how far we're going here. We're going to cut off our coverage at the year 2000. So anything that comes out year 2000 or after, that we'll talk about that.
So basically, the Nintendo 64 is the last system we'll be talking about.
Yes, that is correct. So, Mark, the first system, of course, is the NES and/or the Famicom, which predates the in Japan predates the NES by like 2 years. Famicom is 83. NES is 85. There's no real consensus on like what the actual release date for the NES was.
Right.
Different times, man.
Well, and like a lot of NES, like the system.
Yeah.
And a lot of games.
A lot of the games.
A lot of games, like even like Nintendo's official release date. People will be like, well, that can't possibly be true because.
Right.
So, it's just records were not kept. It's just very nebulous.
I mean, it's so crazy to think that like, that just wasn't no one was thinking about this as a thing that you needed to keep records on. It wasn't a historic event at the time.
So even though it was released in 85 or like it showed up in the US market in 85, it really didn't. I know we got ours for Christmas and I'm assuming it was 86.
Okay, so you got yours for Christmas 86. I got mine, I want to say September of my kindergarten year. How old are you in kindergarten? 4, 5?
5 generally.
5. So we got ours in the fall of 87.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes because I have a very vivid memory of walking home from school and encountering my older sister who was a crossing guard, like on my way home, and her saying, "We'll set up the Nintendo when I get home from this."
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that must.
So was there an occasion? Like, why did your family get one? Did you want one? Did you know it was the thing?
Yes. So like most of my early video game memories, a lot of this is going to be tied to my lifelong friend Pete Farr. Hi, Pete. And he always had video game stuff before me, right? Like that was a pattern that would continue. But the NES was one of those things that he had at his house and that I know I played in his mom's basement and loved and wanted to play more. So yeah, that's how I don't know why we got it though. Like I don't know that I have an answer for that. I was too young to really have any concept.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking now that there's no way I got mine that early. We must have not have gotten ours until like 1990.
I think that makes sense
because I was probably like 5 years old when it happened. So I was old enough to remember, and it came in a collection with a zapper and a power pad,
right?
And like the main.
When did that bundle come out?
I just looked it up. It was 1990.
Shoot,
and it had like the 3 It had a single cartridge that had Duck Hunt, Super Mario Brothers, and World Class Track and
Meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we had. And so now I'm realizing
That came out in 1990?
that's what the internet is telling me.
I feel like I may demand further research on that because that would have made me 8 in 1990. And that's the version we had. We had that version. I guess I don't know whether or not it was the version that we had at first, or if like that, if it came later or something, that we got like a second one later. I totally don't remember, but we definitely had that 8. There's no way I was in kindergarten at 8. That's crazy.
Yeah, you'd be in like 2nd grade.
Yeah. So that's not right. There are some holes in the story here.
It's possible it wasn't released in 1990. It's possible it was like 89 or something.
Yeah, I want to say it was
what
a
cursory internet search told me. If you know,
yeah, you can always write into us. We're almost an hour into the episode. We haven't mentioned where people can write to us.
No, we should definitely.
You can, if you have any corrections or complaints or questions, please write into Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And you can tell us about what year that thing actually came out. Mark, do you know what the launch lineup? I don't know why I'm posing that like a question. I've got it in front of me. I'm going to tell you what the launch lineup.
Okay, great, because my answer is no.
Yeah, I know. It's I apologize. The launch lineup for the NES in the US, it's the biggest of the international launch lineups. The Famicom only launched with 3 games: Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye. Which is like nothing.
Yeah.
Also, what's Popeye doing in there? Get that out of there. The US NES launch in '85 is 10-Yard Fight, which I don't know at all. Baseball, Clue Land, Duck Hunt, Excite Bike, Golf, Gyromite, Hogan's Alley, Ice Climber, Kung Fu, Pinball, Soccer, Stack Up, Super Mario Brothers, Tennis, Wild Gunman, and Wrecking Crew.
Wow.
So a couple things to note in this lineup. There are two games here that require a peripheral, right? Wild Gunman and Duck Hunt use the NES Zapper, and Gyromite uses the Rob robot. And Rob is, important in Nintendo history because that's how Nintendo was able to get into toy stores and electronic stores, is that it was being marketed as a toy, Rob being this like robot kind of figure or whatever that would actually play this game along with you. All he did was spin tops that held buttons down. But people were so averse to video game consoles after the Atari crashed and ET ruined everything, that Nintendo had to trick people into being like, oh no, this is a toy that has a robot and a gun with it. Did you ever have a Rob?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I had a Zap, which like I'm not sad about.
No.
Although I've always been fascinated by robots, so it would have been fun to have one.
Yeah, of course. It would have been fun, but like he wouldn't have been your friend.
Right. But I did, like I was saying, like definitely had the Zapper and the Power Pad.
Yeah, and those are like, in my mind, those are the 3 big like hardware add-ons to this thing. The NES was also, there was a revision of it. The NES 101 is what it was dubbed in 1993. And it was a top loading system, which brought it into, and had like a similar design to the Super Nintendo, and ditto the controllers, which they shrunk down a little bit and gave like kind of rounded edges so they weren't like kind of the pointy.
Yeah, that'll be interesting when we get the NES Classic Edition.
Yeah.
Is playing with those square controllers again, which are not very ergonomic, especially for, as we've established, big man hands.
Right, we are big men. Yeah. I mean, that will be interesting, and not that did you ever have or play the top loading Nintendo with those other controllers?
No, I mean 93 is so late. The Super Nintendo's been out for 2 years at this point.
Yeah. We had one. I don't know why. Again, not really tracking why, but like when it came out, it was also super affordable.
Sure.
And they were still like making games for the NES at about this time, like Wario's Woods and Star Tropics 2 were both like super late in the console's lifespan, even into the next console's lifespan. And so I think I played both of those games. on the top loader. And the controllers are more comfortable, but they're just a little bit smaller. So,
But the NES was definitely, an incredibly formative experience for me.
yeah. What would you say are like your biggest like game experiences?
So I remember, Super Mario Brothers 3 launching, I was young, and that was
Yep.
a huge
Yep.
deal.
Fives.
Like, I remember the McDonald's toys. It was Super Mario Brothers 3 launching was huge. And I also remember very specifically like a time in my life when so I have two adopted brothers, and the youngest brother, his birth mom came and lived with us for the last 6 weeks of her pregnancy. And I remember we would, like, as kids, like me, my two older sisters, we would be playing like the Nintendo,
Right.
Super Mario, and the Nick's birth mom would be just like watching us and like hanging out, and that's such like a memory for me. And it's it's like such like a, looking back on it, like cool experience to have. At the time I was a kid, so it was like, oh, like this doesn't mean, it's just like the way things
don't
are.
know. Yeah, exactly.
But it's just, so Super Mario Brothers 3, and also with Super Mario Brothers 3, this is a question I'd love posing to people, like, do you remember where you learned where the warp whistles were?
I mean, you learn where the first warp whistle is from watching the movie The Wizard, of course, with Fred Savage and Jenny Lewis. But I mean, we had a subscription to Nintendo Power, so, and that came with a Super Mario Brothers 3 strategy guide. Like that was it. 1 month it double shipped with like a normal issue and the strategy guide.
So we didn't have like Nintendo Power, but I remember our family's favorite babysitter. She was like, probably, at the time I thought she was like so grown up. She was probably like 13.
Right.
But she
knew them all.
She knew them all. And so that's where I learned them.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I've got, memories of playing the original Ninja Gaiden on this thing, on the NES, and getting to, I'm not going to be able to describe what it is. It's a couple levels in, but there's a part of this game where you need to get hit by a bird. Like it's a jump and you need to get hit by a bird, which like bounces your character in a direction to like actually progress to finish the jump. And we had gotten to this thing and knew what we had to do and had just like a ton of lives. But it was a sleepover and like 3:00 in the morning. And I remember just so vividly these dumb things you remember, right? Of like leaving the thing on all night and like whoever got up in the morning first, like turn on the TV to check on it, make sure it was okay.
Yeah, because again, so many games had no save features.
Yeah, very few. And a lot of them, like the workaround that they had for it was a password feature like Metroid,
right,
or Kid Icarus. Which is an insufficient way to keep track of your progress. I don't know what other like memories jump to mind for you of like fun times with the NES.
Man, I mean, again, it was such an awesome system, but so much of my memory of it revolves around Super Mario Brothers 3 and playing it with my sisters, because I remember the first time we beat it.
Yeah.
And what we would do is like my oldest sister, she would play, and then the rest of us would just be happy like sitting there and watching,
right.
See it happen. It was just like, oh, whoa, like so cool to see Skyworld. And we get to level 8 and or world 8 and trying to figure out like all like the crazy like, oh, the hands that grab you when you're going to, like, all those fun things. Remember the first time she beat Bowser, and it goes like, sorry Mario, but your princess is in another castle. Then it goes ha ha ha. And I remember we were young and it got us. So like that first part, where it was like, oh no. But then like the like ha ha ha, and we were all like, yay.
I remember using the fact that I had beaten Super Mario Brothers 3 to impress some older kids at one point. It worked, man.
Yeah, how would it not?
Yeah, it's an impressive thing, and that game is such an undertaking. Like for the time that you can burn through that game in like 3.5 hours, maybe 3.5 or 4.
Doing every world?
No, I think if you're doing every world, I think you gotta
Because I think if you
Well, that's true.
if you're using the warp whistles, you could probably beat that in like 15, 20 minutes.
Do you remember like the route you would take as a kid to play through the game? Like
To speed through it.
just to play it. Like if you were to play it, did you have a like specific method for getting from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, kind of. Like where you know how there's like branching paths in different worlds, so you don't have to do like I kind of vaguely remember like which ones we would do.
How would you use the warp whistles?
If I was trying, sometimes we would get like the first one and skip right to the big world, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Little Big World.
Little Big World. If we were just speeding through it, we'd like get to Little Big World and then warp again, so you
Right.
could go to level 8.
See, I feel like if you do that, then you run the risk of not having enough power ups, especially when you're like an 8-year-old kid and you're not very good at the game. I used to play through the first 4 worlds and then get so the next one is the Sky World, and just get to the sky because then you had enough like P-wings and Tanuki suits and whatever to comfortably navigate World 8.
I think World 7 is the one I've played the least.
It's so hard. World 7 is harder than World 8.
To this day, we usually would skip it.
Yeah.
Because like the Ice World's pretty tough too.
Yeah, it's got more levels than most of the other worlds. We're not talking just about Super Mario Bros. 3 here.
But I do think it's I would put Super Mario Bros. 3 up there with the one. My gut is just like the best game ever made.
Yeah, it's up there.
And so it was what I spent probably the majority of my time with an NES playing, and I could just replay that game endlessly, which is why I'm getting a NES Classic Edition.
Also, the first 2 Zelda games are on there. I love Zelda 2.
I didn't play those until I was an adult. I didn't play them as kids.
Zelda 2 is actually the one that I played a bunch as a kid. I didn't really play the first one until I got older, but Zelda 2. I probably spent more time on that game than anything else.
Because I didn't have the experience with it wasn't until later, like I will say a Nintendo 64, possibly the GameCube, that I was aware of like, because I didn't really have a lot of friends. Weirdly, I didn't have a lot of friends who had Nintendo systems. They had like Sega systems. And I did not have like a subscription to Nintendo Power or anything. So the games that I got for like they were games that my parents bought and were like, this is the game you're going, like this is the game.
Right, you weren't really directing that.
I had no idea what was available. So like Zelda and like Legend of Zelda, Zelda and Zelda 2, I didn't play until much later.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Zelda is also just in a little bit of a weird space, being that it's not. I mean, how many Mario games are on?
Right.
You know, there are the 3 main Super Mario games plus regular old Mario Brothers. I already mentioned Wrecking Crew. That's kind of a Mario game, and Donkey Kong, obviously. But yeah, Zelda. There's 2 of them, and then like. We see one on the Super Nintendo, and then later we see one on the Game Boy. You know, like it's just there aren't that many of them.
Well,
there are now, of course, but it took a while for that to kind of spin up to the place where it is now.
Well, moving on a little bit.
Yeah.
The Game Boy was released in '89. Do you remember when you got one?
Oh, geez. I think probably pretty early. So the. Yeah, I think pretty early.
We moved around. We moved in 1991, and so I got the Game Boy Christmas of '91.
Okay.
So it was 2 years after it had been out. That system had such a long lifespan.
Yeah, kind of longer than really anything else. I mean, I know PlayStation 2 games were made for a very long time after PlayStation 2, but like this thing. It was just out of control.
Well, and especially because I mean they would do revisions, so it got thinner. You know, over time it got thinner.
Yeah.
And so there's the Game Boy Color and all these types of things. But basically, it was running on ancient technology.
Oh yeah, forever. So the system launches with Super Mario Land. Got to launch with a Mario. Alleyway. Which is a brick breaking kind of game. Baseball. So Nintendo also launched with baseball. And then, sorry, I'm looking at a chart. This is a Japanese game, Tetris and tennis. Um, and obviously, the big mover on this thing early on was Tetris. Tetris was the thing that made Game Boy something that like your dad would pick up.
Yeah.
Sarah, my girlfriend's father, was, I guess, notorious for playing Tetris on Game Boy. Like, would just come home and play Tetris on Game Boy.
I mean, I don't feel like system sellers like Tetris exist anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, people don't buy. I'm partly, and it's not just because of cell phones. I don't think system sellers like this have existed. Maybe, I guess you could argue Wii Sports.
I don't think you need to argue that. I think it did. I mean, I think that's for sure. Wii Sports sold Wiis.
But yeah, like Tetris on the Game Boy was a phenomenon.
Yeah. And man, it's so, the Game Boy had the like connector cable, so you could still do, and most of these games support that. I guess not most of these games. Baseball, tennis, and Tetris all supported multiple player. So like if you were on a road trip with your family or with your friends, again, this is me and Pete Farr going up to his dad's cabin in northern Wisconsin, and we both had our Game Boys, and we were playing something together on it. Just such a cool, and it's amazing. This thing displayed in 4 colors. It had a horrible green background.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4 colors, but like really it displayed in like shades of gray.
That's right, shades of greenish gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about hardware revisions for this thing. The first of which was just sort of the see-through version of it that came out in 1995. So that's 6 years before they did anything to it.
Wow.
But the first like real revision to it is the Game Boy Pocket, which is so much smaller. Man, every time I see like in an old movie or TV show someone playing like the original clunky enormous Game Boy, I get so jealous.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably have like experience. You probably owned a Game Boy.
Yeah,
but it is like a brick.
Yeah,
and
like in size and dimension. Yeah,
yeah, and it's so thick. It took like 6 AA batteries.
I think 4.
4 AA batteries. The screen like was not backlit.
Nope.
So one year I got the weird like Frankenstein magnifier that had like lights on it as well.
Yeah, barely works.
Barely. I mean, not really worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that system, looking back on it, Nintendo must have been making so much money on that thing. On that thing.
Well, and so they sort of continue. The Game Boy gets kind of a second life due in no small part to Pokemon. Which, is a worldwide phenomenon to this day. But when then they start. This is when they start to reissue the Game Boy Pocket as something that is like smaller and sleeker. That did it also? I think it had AAA batteries possibly, and was just a tighter experience. Anyway. And when did the Pocket come out? Like 96?
96, yeah.
Did you have a Game Boy Pocket?
I did not. I always owned the OG.
The OG, yeah.
And
original Game Boy.
Yeah.
That's what that stands for.
That's what
that
stands for. And
don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Other like siblings got Game Boy Colors.
Ah, okay.
But I always just had the OG.
So I never had a Game Boy Color, but I did have a Game Boy Pocket. I actually, my little brother and I, probably through Nintendo Power, we're like, Pokemon is coming. We're going to get into it. And we're going to get into it by both of us buying new Game Boy Pockets. And because they were colorful, you could buy them blue or red and many other colors, but we bought them in blue and red and then bought Pokemon Blue and Red. And then just played a bunch of Pokemon together on these things, and it was beautiful.
Did you earn it with your own money?
Yeah, I did. I think I may have even kicked in for some of his too, just because. Although at that point they weren't that expensive, like $70 or $80 or something. which is what you can buy a 2DS for now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's same with like all these systems. Again, pretty much up to the GameCube. My experience with all these different games was so it would be like, oh, I'd go to my cousins for like a week in the summer, and they would have some like crazy, because I didn't play like JRPGs or anything on the NES, and so my cousin was the first time I experienced game or Pokemon.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, what on earth is this type of thing? I don't know. There's a lot of like memory tied up in that for me, like going to other people's houses and experiencing these like crazy games that I'd never seen before, because I was so used to playing just like a select like 6 or 7 games.
Yeah. And then the Game Boy Color comes out in 1998. 98. So the thing originally comes out in 89. They're putting out like a major revision 9 years later. And then it goes on to the Game Boy Color is not replaced in terms of hardware until 2001. So like, or 2002?
I think 2001.
In any event, the Game Boy reigns supreme for over a decade. Hey, Game Boy. You're doing great, Game Boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, it's super hard to beat that. And I can't really think of other hardware.
And it was also at like the height of like Nintendo Mania.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Like this thing launched.
It is the 90s.
Yeah, like this thing launched at the beginning of Nintendo Mania and continued through, Nintendo's heyday, basically.
And even when they pivot away to the Game Boy Advance, they're keeping that same branding. They're still calling it Game Boy. So yeah, it's not till a while later that they ditch that altogether.
So in 1991, the Super Famicom or the Super Nintendo was released in the United States. It was released a year earlier as the Super Famicom
in Japan.
What is your experience? Like, how did you hear about the Super Nintendo? And like, yeah, what is your like? Did you know it was coming? Were you part of the hype for it?
1991, I would have been 9 years old. I was born in 1982. Let's just throw that out there. I'm 34 years old. I don't remember really. I don't totally remember the lead up to it. I don't really remember seeing Super Mario World for the first time or like Link to the Past. But I do remember there being just sort of like a just flood of games that looked amazing to me. I definitely got it before Super Metroid came out because I remember buying Super Metroid on day one, and that's 93, I believe. I want to say that's right. 93 or 94. It says at the beginning of the game, I'm trying to remember like the title screen where it says like Nintendo presents 1990, either 3 or 4, and then it says Metroid 3, which is not the name of the game. The name of the game is Super Metroid. So yeah, I don't really remember how I heard about it. Do you have a?
I remember like I again was living kind of in my own bubble.
Of course, yeah.
You're
kids.
Yeah, it's weird that I didn't see any television or I don't remember seeing any television commercials for it. But I remember really like for any Nintendo games.
Sure.
But my
not even Nintendo cereal?
No, I have no memory of it. But my cousin, who was probably like 10 years older than me, got one. He worked at a pizza place for a summer,
right,
during summers, and he bought a Super Nintendo, and so I remember seeing Super Mario World on that thing and just being completely like my mind blown.
Right. I think for me, the Super Nintendo was an introduction to just specifically Final Fantasy.
Sure.
Final Fantasy 2 on that thing. Our family friends, the Lebanowskis, had a copy of this game. And I remember so many like bright summer days down in their basement playing this game. And just like, being rocked when like the twins sacrifice themselves or whatever. They turn themselves to stone to stop a room from collapsing on everyone. But like that was maybe the first time I was ever like, oh, that storytelling is possible in games. And And then just like randomly for Christmas a couple years later, my grandmother had bought Final Fantasy 3 for me. And I remember being
And what is that? Is that 5
that's
now?
6.
6.
Yeah. And it I remember being disappointed because I was like, this isn't the Final Fantasy that I wanted. I wanted 2. But then of course I turned it on and it's one of the greatest games ever made. So that worked out for the better on that. But yeah, I mean that sort of I think started to like awaken my mind to like what games could be. Even though, like the writing's not great in these games, but like they are ambitious and they do tell stories.
For my strongest memory of the Super Nintendo, and there's so many great games on it, but
Yeah.
my strongest memory that I still think about on rainy days is having to be like overcast and rainy outside
Mm-hmm.
and playing Donkey Kong Country with my little sister
Yes.
and having like the music of the water level, like all like Donkey Kong Country. I associate, yeah, that's like another one of those like memory things for me.
Yeah.
Where I played a lot of games on the Super Nintendo. There are so many good games on the Super Nintendo. That's the one that holds the strongest like moment in time for
Yeah.
me.
Me too. I mean, I think I was just old enough to actually be like old enough to feel ownership over that moment in time. The Super Nintendo is I have one still and a stack of like 20 games for it. And like just having it in the entertainment center makes me happy, I love that thing.
We still have one at my the original one that we owned. Like we still have it at my parents' house, and when we all get together during the holidays, my sister and I will occasionally play it. One of our controllers is like the what do you call
D-pad?
it? The D-pad
Yeah.
is broken.
Oh,
and
no.
we tried like opening it up and like cleaning it, like following like a YouTube, and it never really took.
I have 3 for some reason.
It's hard to find. They don't even really sell I mean, obviously they don't sell replacements, but it's hard to find. There are lots that are USB, but it's hard to find ones that will actually plug into a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a bummer.
That is kind of a bummer.
But it's a great system. I would if the DS didn't exist, which had so many great Super Nintendo games on it, like Chrono Trigger.
Right.
I would say the Super Nintendo is, well, even with the DS, I think the Super Nintendo is my favorite system of all time. And a lot of that's nostalgia, but
for sure, but a lot of those games are also excellent.
Yeah.
When those games started popping up on the new 3DS library, I started a policy of I buy them all, I don't care. I buy them all.
And you'll get a chance to rebuy them all on the Switch probably.
Yep, and I'll probably...
And I will happily do it.
Yes, and I will probably also happily buy a Super Nintendo Classic when that is announced. And I don't get to pre-order it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the NES I'm excited about, but almost exclusively for... Actually, there's a lot of games on there that I'm excited for.
But probably fewer than 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But an SNES, that is so appealing to me.
Man.
I really hope they do it, even though I'll own some of these games on Virtual Console.
If they do it, I hope one or both of the Final Fantasies is on there and that Chrono Trigger is on there.
Yeah.
It's not a deal breaker if they're not.
And it would be, it's unlikely, but I would love to see a Dragon Quest on there.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So what's your experience with the Virtual Boy?
Mark, let me tell you, I was one of the people who owned a Virtual Boy.
No way.
I saved up for it with my allowance. This actually might be the first one that I bought with my own money, I think. Like system that I bought.
So
with
the
my own
Virtual
money.
Boy was released in 85. So
95.
95. So you were 13.
Yeah.
And again, how did you hear about it?
Nintendo Power.
Oh, okay.
Again, yeah. We subscribed to Nintendo Power for like 7 years. So yeah, I read about it early, and started saving up money for it because I was like, this is it. This is gonna be amazing. And I threw a lot of money at this thing because I had Mario Clash, I had Tennis, which I think might have come with the thing, Tellero Boxer, and Wario Land.
Wow.
So, and those were all launch games. So I don't think there was anything that came out after launch. There are only like a dozen games for this thing.
Sold less than 1 million.
Yeah, no, it's not great. It's not great.
Well, I didn't own one,
Mhm.
but there was somebody in my school or like my class who did.
Yeah.
And so that's how I played it. Played like tennis, like stuff like just hanging out. And
did it have like a link feature? I never encountered anyone else who had
yeah,
one.
I have no idea because I only know one person who owned one. And I've never met anybody who has one as part of their like collection.
Yeah.
And I think they're like they will die out because the mirrors used to
if you're not familiar with this thing, I mean, you might think, oh yeah, virtual reality, I know what that's like. This was nothing like that. So it's a enormous headset, so huge that it's on like a tripod and can't be strapped to your face. You have to like lean in.
Yeah, like those binoculars at national parks.
Yes, exactly.
Like putting your face into
it. And then inside there's a display that has less color range than the Game Boy, showing just black and red. Just black and red. It's not like a gradient. It's just black and red. That's it. And because there were two screens, one basically pressed up against each eye, it was able to create a 3D effect, which was neat.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was a neat effect.
Well, and like virtual reality now is having a renaissance, and like people are pouring billions of dollars into it. But don't forget that in the early 90s, VR was also hyped as the next big thing.
Yeah.
There were like at like really fancy arcades, there were like VR stations. I remember taking a cruise with my family, and one of the activities you could do was like the VR thing. And obviously it was very rudimentary technology.
Yes.
But it was hyped as virtual reality is here. As a culture, we were like, that's what was being pushed on us.
It's just crazy, like absolutely crazy that Nintendo tries to create a 3D console, like an actual 3D display console, before they have a console that can actually process polygons, right? Like the Super Nintendo sort of did with the Super FX chip inside the Star Fox, which it's amazing that they could add hardware to the system by putting it in a cartridge.
I mean, they were doing that since the NES days.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it definitely took on an entirely new life with the FX chip.
Right. But yeah, so they're not, this is pre them releasing something that could play Mario 64 on it. And they're like, yeah, no, we're going to present things in 3D to you, even though like they can't run 3D graphics. So it ended up just being a lot of like multiple planes, Mario Clash wasn't really 3D graphics. There was a foreground and a background, and like ditto Teleroboxer, they're just like different planes.
Explain to me the gameplay of Mario Clash.
Mario Clash is just like the original Mario Brothers. So there must have been a way to link these things up. So it was like 2-player. But so you know how in regular Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, mind you, but Mario Brothers, there's like 3 levels of platforms, or maybe 4. Then you have to like get under guys, and
right.
When they get to the bottom, they go up the pipe, and then they're at the top. Well, this would crisscross so that there's like a level in front of you and a level like further back, and they could transfer between them by using pipes.
Oh, okay.
So like the 3D of it, like it is part of the game, and that you are forced to view like the foreground and the background at the same time, could technically be achieved without it. But it was, neat nonetheless.
I mean, one of the reasons that a Virtual Boy was never appealing to me, even though I had like a friend who had one, was because of what they were trying to achieve. The games were so limited. You couldn't do a proper Super Mario Brothers game. You can't do,
But you could do like one of the great Wario games. Like the Wario Land on that thing is, I really like Wario Land Shake It on the Wii. And I liked the first Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3 on the Game Boy. But I think Wario Land on the Virtual Boy is like that game realized.
Is it a proper Wario Land?
Yeah.
Like it's a platformer?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a full game, and it's good. And it's one of those things that's going to be lost forever, that we'll never see again.
So this thing bombed
Hard.
so hard that Nintendo is for the longest time was embarrassed by it and just like as far as they were concerned it did not exist.
Yep. And I mean you'll see there's like a Virtual Boy trophy in Smash Brothers, and maybe you can get one in Animal Crossing or whatever. But like these games have never appeared on a virtual console. I don't think they ever will. And the like Mario Clash, that could have been a brand. That could have been a brand that they kept around. Telero Boxer was basically Punch Out with robots. That could come back. That would be great. But we'll never see them.
It would be cool to like you're like that Wario game or something on the virtual console.
Yeah, I mean these were the 4 games I had, but if Wario Land, Mario Clash, Tennis, and Telero Boxer came out on the 3DS, I'd buy them in a heartbeat.
Tennis is the one I have the strongest memory
of
playing. And again, that makes cool use of the 3D because it gives depth of field to the court.
Yeah. How did they achieve that? Was that like a Mode 7 thing or?
I don't know. I know so little about like the technology that powered the Virtual Boy. Something to do a deeper dive into.
Yeah, and this is also the most anyone has ever talked about a Virtual Boy. It's been like 12 minutes.
I mean, the fact that you owned one
it's surprising, right?
Yeah, you're one in less than a million.
There is not a piece of Nintendo hardware that I have not, like mainline hardware.
Right, like there are revisions and stuff. But.
Right, there are revisions and like controllers. Obviously, I didn't have a Rob, but every console and handheld and Virtual Boy I've owned at some point.
What happened to your Virtual Boy? Do you know?
I sold it to like EB or Babbage's or whatever proto GameStop, possibly to fund my Nintendo 64, or maybe to help fund the PlayStation or whatever.
Yeah,
it's there's no place for it in your gaming library because like you don't put it. It doesn't live by your TV and it doesn't live in your backpack. It has to be like set up on your desk. I don't know. Like it demands its own lifestyle.
It's a very it just.
It's so
who knows what they were thinking? Like it is an interesting gimmick.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels so out of left field for Nintendo, and the public kind of agreed and like just rejected it outright. So as bad as people bag on the Wii U, it is nowhere near
no Virtual Boy.
It's no Virtual Boy.
So NES Classic, great. We will love when there's a Game Boy Classic. We will love when there's a Super Nintendo Classic. Virtual Boy Classic?
I mean, I would buy one.
I would too. For $60?
For $60?
Yeah.
Like, would I? But unlike the other ones, it would have to be like full size. You couldn't do like a mini version. I mean, if they sold like just an amiibo of a Virtual Boy, like that size, I would buy that just to like display.
I wonder if they could do like what it would cost for them to make a like an actual headset that you could put on your face.
I have no interest in that though.
But that might be fun.
I think
you could play the like 8 games they made.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these games, there's not much to it.
No.
So I don't know.
All right. Well, let's close the book on the Virtual Boy. 1995 is dead.
1996,
however, is the release of the Nintendo 64. I remember getting a video cassette from Nintendo Power teasing the release of the Nintendo Ultra 64, which is what it was being dubbed at the time. And it had video. This cassette had footage of Super Mario 64, of Star Fox, and of Killer Instinct for some reason. And I remember this was one that I called early, that I was like, this is it. This is going to change everything. This is going to be the best. It's going to be the best. And have I told this story about buying my Nintendo 64 before?
I can't remember if it was on one that went live or like one of the burner episodes we did.
Yeah, me neither. I bought it at Target one morning, the morning it came out. And I was just insistent that no, you did in fact have more than just Pilot Wings. Open another box. I want to see you've got Mario 64 because I knew that game was coming. And I knew that it was going to that I was going to love it to pieces. And I remember so specifically my buddy Ryan George's like he came over to play after school one day, and I was like, oh yeah, this thing Nintendo, and like just that opening sequence where Lakitu like flies in and like circles around Mario, and then you're out in the field in front of Peach's castle, and just having the ability to run around, that he was like, whoa, let me borrow this thing. And I was like, nope, this is mine. You can play it while you're here, but other than that, you're never gonna get my. Yeah, I remember it feeling revelatory.
Yeah, again, I think that's one of those landmark moments that I don't know that there's been something like that since then.
Right.
Where it's just like, holy crap, like Mario's in 3D. And the way that Nintendo did it explains it. The way Nintendo explains it is the most Nintendo way, where it's like, oh no, Lakitu has a camera and he's following you around, and that's why it's in 3D now, not 2D anymore, right?
Yeah, that they explain. So like, and you have the ability to control the camera somewhat. So they like have to personify it. Like, oh, if it's something you're controlling, it has to be someone.
Yeah, and I never had a PlayStation, so this was my first experience with an analog control, and Mario 64 was just or a like a joystick, like
an analog stick.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think even the analog sticks on the DualShock come later.
Oh, okay.
Or I think the DualShock
like in
itself comes later.
To.
Yeah,
but yeah, the Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64 blew my mind. We didn't get it until. And Mario Kart 64 was a 96 release.
Yeah, it was just later in the year.
Yeah, but we didn't get it because the game we got with it was Mario Kart.
Yeah,
like I didn't play Super Mario 64 until later.
Yeah,
and that Mario Kart to this day, and again, some of it is nostalgia, and some of it's because it had the best
battle mode.
The best battle mode. It had Block Fort, which remains the best.
Block Fort's so good.
And they've tried to kind of replicate it on like the.
Not recently. Mario Kart 8 has terrible battle mode.
Yeah, but I feel like on GameCube there was like a pseudo.
Yeah, I think
Block
you're right.
Fort,
and maybe even on DS.
Yeah, but they just haven't been the same. And then the glitch in Skyscraper that makes you go like faster than you do most of the time. Like, again, not the best Mario Kart, but the one I have so many great memories playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is also worth saying that like Mario Kart and GoldenEye together sort of introduced this idea of 4-player split screen, party time. So the Nintendo 64 is the first console to have 4 controller ports natively. You don't need an adapter, and that's something that everyone apes for like their consoles after basically until we stopped having controller ports. Like I'm looking at my Dreamcast right now; it has 4 controller ports, and it makes so much sense to have those 4 together and really play like this. This is, I think, where Nintendo kind of doubles down on the idea of couch, either competitive or couch. I guess it's all competitive. There's no real co-op at this point. But like, you got GoldenEye, you've got Mario Kart, you've got Mario Party,
you got Super Smash Brothers.
You got Super Smash Brothers, which are all fun games by yourself, cool games 2-player, and then chaotic and amazing 4-player. Is it fair to say they invent that? Like that they invent the 4-player in front of one TV experience?
I don't know that anybody did it before.
Yeah.
And finding out later in life that the Nintendo 64 was a failure was so crazy to me.
Yeah, it's hard, right?
Because like GoldenEye.
Yeah.
all of my friends
Yeah.
had played GoldenEye. Like everybody I knew had a Nintendo 64 for Gold. GoldenEye was huge. Mario Kart was huge. So like finding Smash Brothers was huge. So finding out later that the PlayStation just blew it out of the water, and the PlayStation did have, I guess
it had a variety of games,
and it had the single player, experiences that,
the kind of stuff
Nintendo,
that
like didn't have.
The kind of stuff that like I seek out now.
Yeah.
Like that's where my Final Fantasy went. I remember being heartbroken because again, Nintendo Power told me at one point there was going to be Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo 64, and that could have been early enough when Sony and Nintendo were like working together. The Nintendo 64 was almost the Nintendo PlayStation, with a disc-based thing, but Nintendo opted to go with cartridges because then they could control it, stops piracy, and all that. But it means that it doesn't have the memory that discs, that a disc or 3 discs would have. So yeah, I mean, like, and Nintendo also just had their more family friendly aesthetic kind of stapled to it too. So your Resident Evils were starting to show up at this time, and they were all going to PlayStation and Saturn first. That's right. That's right. I brought up the Saturn. Yeah. So Nintendo ends up starts. This is when they start their trend of missing out on third party stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo 64 has definitely shaped Nintendo, the current Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like the trends the Nintendo 64 set have just
carried through to
this day.
I mean, it's they made their own controller and were like, this is it. Everyone's going to use this controller. It's going to be weird. It's only going to make sense for Mario, maybe for Zelda, which we haven't talked about.
But yeah, I mean, that tells you as much as the Nintendo 64 doesn't have a lot of third-party support, the Nintendo games on the system are incredible.
Yeah, agreed. Oh man, such good just 3D adventure and platforming, and really like all genres except for role playing.
Well, and the especially weird, but not weird, the especially cool thing about this is, like the Nintendo 64 controller was weird, but nobody had any idea to do that, how to do it better. Nintendo was they on their first try figured out how to do 3D platforming.
Yeah, they figured out they figured out the camera, and the camera's a little clunky,
sure,
by today's standards, but like they figured it out, and they figured out how to make you move. And I still like, anytime I'm playing a 3D platformer, I just want the character to move like Mario does in Mario 64.
Yeah, so yes, like the controller was weird. Yes, like some of the games are a little clunky, but they weren't iterating off of anything. They were figuring out how to do it.
Yeah.
The fact that they knock it out of the park in a lot of instances is incredible.
They're also pioneering tactile feedback at home. This is the first time a Rumble Pack.
Star Fox 64.
Star Fox 64, baby! The Rumble Pack, which is insane, a thing that you have to plug into the back of the controller, just vibrates. And, standard practice now that like your controller is going to vibrate. What's wrong with my controller if it's not vibrating,
Yeah.
Just simple, like they were writing the playbook that like everyone else picks up on.
Yeah, when Sony in the original PlayStation 3 controller did not have Rumble.
Yeah.
And they eventually revised it and put Rumble in. Like, it's just an expected feature.
Yes.
And Nintendo was doing all of this on a system. If you look at Nintendo's home consoles, like sales, removing
the Wii, it's just been a
downward like slope. And the Wii was obviously an
anomaly.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle. But yeah, so and the Nintendo 64 continued this trend, but and not to say that somebody else wouldn't have figured it out, but
they did.
All of the fruits of 3D gaming we're harvesting because Nintendo figured it out.
It's sort of it almost doesn't like jive right in my mind that the Nintendo 64 didn't sell that well. You said earlier that like everyone played GoldenEye, everyone played Mario Kart. But when I was living in Chicago, I was like going through a Nintendo 64 hankering. I was like, oh, I need one. So I went to this awesome store called People Play Games on the north side. That on the north side was me describing where it is. It's not part of the name of the store. And I bought a Nintendo 64 and Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64. 2 games we haven't mentioned at all yet, but are also one very good game and one like decent but has problems game.
I don't like either of those games.
You don't like Banjo-Kazooie?
No.
Oh man, I love Banjo-Kazooie. But I bought both of these games and living in Chicago, so like you get around walking and public transportation, and we walked all the way back, and I have never been stopped by strangers as much as when I was walking home with my Nintendo 64. People being like, whoa, you got a Nintendo 64? Cool. And this is in like 2009, that people are just like freaking out about seeing this thing. So like it has such a good legacy and lots of like, I think people have a lot of goodwill built up towards it. And I don't know if it was just that like everyone's cousin had one or what, but
yeah, I will say that as great as these games are, both I would say this generation of consoles, like the PlayStation, the N64, I would say have the games that aged
the worst.
Yeah. Because these first foray into like the few PlayStation like Symphony of the Night, like side-scrolling games where they didn't try to do 3D polygons are, they look great still.
Right. They're basically like souped up Super Nintendo games. Yeah.
But yeah, the games visually don't hold up very well.
Yeah, like you try to play the original Resident Evil or like the first Tomb Raider or like Twisted Metal or any of those games from the generation on PlayStation, and they're almost impossible to look at. And I think the same is true of a lot of these games.
Yeah, but the core gameplay is so great that Ocarina of Time is still considered by many people, not myself, but I don't think it's a bad game, to be the best Zelda game ever. And they make these 3DS they make these 3DS remakes, and the core gameplay doesn't change.
No, they pretty them up and cut out some fat.
Yeah. And again, I think that's just a testament to how incredible, maybe small, but how incredible the Nintendo 64 library is.
Yeah, I will agree with that 100%. And there are, man, it's such an interesting system. Like, it's amazing how much of a failure it is considered to be. But it sold worlds better than the GameCube and then the Wii U. So what do I know? All right, Mark. So that brings us up. Well, there's one more little footnote here. Japan did get a disk drive add-on to this thing in 1999. The 64DD, which just it allowed for some like read-write capabilities. So like adding things to games that existed, and also had like an art studio thing associated with it, which kind of carried forward the tradition of Mario Paint, which we didn't talk about, but I could talk about Mario Paint forever. To have this like sort of creator suite where you could make things and save things. We never got the DD here, disk drive here, and I don't think that's a big loss really. But
they had, I think the ambitions for the disk drive were greater than the technology allowed.
That's probably true. It was probably really a Virtual Boy situation. Was that they saw something that they want to take advantage of and then just couldn't really follow through on it.
Yeah, like I mean, ahead of its time is such a cliche way to say it, but kind of, the technology just wasn't capable of doing what their ambitions were.
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't help that the console didn't sell well, so they didn't sell very many of them.
Yeah. And, by 99, they're actually getting pretty close to the release of the GameCube anyway. So it's sort of weird that Nintendo was doing this sort of like stacking system because obviously that behavior had been modeled by Sega previously. Where you slap a Sega CD and a 32X onto your Genesis, and that sunk them as a hardware manufacturer. So yeah, weird for Nintendo to take a cue from Sega on that one.
Well, but I mean, they had been that. I mean, that's what the Nintendo PlayStation was originally going to be, right? Was a disc drive add-on for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, they had kind of not really the same thing, but they had dabbled in it with the Super Game Boy. No, I guess like I'm thinking of the one for the GameCube that you have to attach to the bottom.
The Game Boy player.
Yeah.
Actually, we should talk about the Super Game Boy a little bit. I have one. It allows you to play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on the Super Nintendo, like on your screen. It did have mouse support, so you could like draw little things.
Oh, whoa! I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it doesn't make the screen as big as your TV screen, because they knew. They knew that you saw you be like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm playing this.
Wait, would you just use the SNES controller to?
You could
you would plug a mouse into there were like special.
I mean, not a mouse, the Super Nintendo mouse.
I didn't even know there was a Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
mouse.
for Mario Paint. Mark, did you not play Mario Paint?
I had Mario Paint. We didn't have that.
You didn't have the mouse?
No, we would just use
Really?
We just use the controller. Yeah.
I don't think I ever played Mario Paint with a controller.
We didn't play that much.
Yeah, I can imagine why. I used to make movies with Mario Paint.
That's
like,
cool.
Had it hooked up to the VCR and would like run through and do the first little bit of animation and then stop it and do the next bit. Like do full cartoons. I say full like it was a 90-minute feature. No. Like a 12-minute something. And it would take me all week. Man, I love that game. Mark, I think we've covered Nintendo through the year 2000.
We obviously could talk about it forever, but I think this is a good stopping point.
Hey, Mark, I think you're right. Let's move on to our listeners reader mail. What are we calling this thing? Today's message comes to us through our email, which of course is Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com.
And I do just want to throw out that we'd love to hear your own memories about these systems that we talked about.
Absolutely.
Today.
Anything that we talk about ever, if you want to weigh in with your own version of it, please write to us.
And if you have spoilers for the upcoming M. Night Shyamalan movie Split,
right,
please let me know.
Please send those on.
I'm dying to know what and here's the thing is that I've heard on the internet that the twist is out there. I've Googled it. I've searched for it and I can't seem to find it.
So if you think you're a little bit better at Google than Mark,
or you use Bing or something.
Yeah, you can use a different search engine if you want to. Then find that, understand it, type it out, send to Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And we will read it. Spoilers we probably won't read on the air.
No.
But your questions, it is fun. Questions, comments, anything, whatever you got. The more you're part of this show, the more show there is, or the more varied show there is.
Yeah.
It'll be more interesting if you're emailing us. Today's email, which I find very interesting, comes from Robin. Hang with me on this, Mark.
Okay.
The title is A Boy and His Blob Obstructs Us from the Blob and Its Life Experience. Now, this question is about the Nintendo game A Boy and His Blob. Is it ethical to bring possession into the relationship between a boy and his blob? It seems the boy was committed to helping the blob's home planet resist occupation by an evil emperor. It would be naive to assume that the blob does not have a complex and layered narrative full of love and loss. Is it deflating? Is this deflating of a symbiotic companionship into an owner-pet fantasy Nintendo's first foray into male conquest and white knighthood? I mean, E.T., while at first presented as a simple, fragile, and as simple, fragile, and dependent on his companion, was still the main character of his story and revealed to experience deeper emotions and greater concerns for others. So the question is, this is me trying to summarize it.
Yeah.
Is A Boy and His Blob, the narrative of A Boy and His Blob, dismissive of the Blob's experience? And is it problematic for us to view the Blob as just a pet and the boy as sole hero?
I've only ever played the Game Boy game, and I, as a child, never figured out how to beat it.
It's a really obtuse game.
So I later watched a YouTube walkthrough of the Game Boy version of A Boy and His Blob, and realized you can beat it in like 3 minutes if you know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But how you're supposed to know to do some of these things, I have no idea.
So I think some of that actually does feed into Robin's question here. That like, if you know what to do, then you can almost effortlessly solve the Blob's problems.
Well, here is what I will say
Yeah.
is that I guess I've always viewed it more, regardless of the title, I've always viewed it more as like teamwork, because yes, the boy is your avatar, you're controlling the boy.
Yes.
You're not able to do anything in this game with, like, you can't even get out of the first room,
right, without feeding the Blob jelly
without assistance from the Blob.
Right.
Yeah, I agree that like in the game the Blob is presented like a pet.
Right, it has no agency.
It has no agency, but yeah, I've always seen it more as teamwork.
So Robin asks if that is Nintendo's first foray into this. I don't think A Boy and His Blob was developed by Nintendo.
No, it wasn't.
But I after reading this question, I was thinking about if there is, and like Pikmin sort of is Nintendo carrying on that same idea, right? Because you play Olimar, or another one of those little alien guys, crash landed on a Pikmin planet. And then you use, and in many cases abuse, the native species to achieve various goals. So I don't know if we can extend the same sort of question to the Pikmin series of games. Is there something wrong or weird about like the white knighting Olimar, for example? Does it diminish the native's experience, or the Blob's experience, or the Pikmin's experience?
I mean, I think by definition it backgrounds it.
Yeah, sure.
I think the question is, do I think it's problematic? And I guess my gut answer is no.
Right.
Because I don't think that either the developer of A Boy and His Blob or Nintendo have established a pattern of behavior that would make me think that their intentions are negative. And while I agree that, art can exist outside of the intentions,
right?
And that
the artist is dead,
exactly, and that it can be something can be problematic even if it wasn't intended to be. I think that the context in which they exist, no, I don't find it problematic.
I mean, I do think it's interesting.
I've definitely never thought about it this way.
No,
so for that, it is interesting.
Yeah, good job, Robin. Good question. I love this question.
Yeah.
It's sort of hard to talk around, just because A Boy and His Blob does come in that era before there's like a solid story for video games. I think it is, if we're tossing around the word problematic, I think it is less problematic than the normal Mario narrative of Mario has to rescue the princess. And that's a different marginalized group. It's, women versus I don't know if like native species is necessarily, but I think that's the angle that she's coming at it from, that like the Blob has a society that we are ignorant to.
Right, because the Game Boy one is the rescue of Princess Blobette.
So that's a double.
Yeah, I mean, but you are working together to rescue the female Blob.
Yeah. It's tough. I think a lot of early video game development, and even Nintendo to this day, is blind to these kinds of social issues. And Nintendo especially, I don't think is particularly good on gender stuff, or thinking outside of like challenging experiences.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Nintendo does not want to. They don't want to make headlines.
They don't want to upset it.
They don't want to upset
right.
anybody. So like with Fire Emblem.
Yeah. Yes.
They are very specific. They're very careful
in like localization.
And they don't, maybe in the most recent one, but they don't let you romance same-sex partners.
Yeah.
And these are conscious decisions, and they're aware of the decisions they're making. They in these instances, it really is like they don't want to be seen as taking a stand.
Right. And I think I think that's an admirable thing, but you also have to wonder, like, at what point does consciously not making a stand make its own stand?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it is. I don't know that I agree that it's admirable that they don't want to take a stand. I think it's understandable, but like you do have to like wonder where, like, at the point that they're like, well, we don't want to upset like any portion of we don't want to make negative headlines, right?
Sure.
We don't want to be in the news for being, let's just say, like, pro gay marriage. We don't want to be in the news for being against gay marriage. We just want to be like right down the middle of the road.
Right. And I mean, Nintendo would famously remove religious imagery from early NES games, like Castlevania games.
Right.
Yeah.
But the argument then would be like, okay, well, but at what point, by choosing to not include this or not include something, to omit something out of fear of, like, like, at what point are you doing harm to like a what's the term I want to use, but basically, like, for a minority group, or like,
or a marginalized
group. And so and it is like it's an interesting conversation, because I don't think inherently the idea that Mario, like, rescues Princess Peach is problematic, but I can understand the argument that like, it is such, like, a trope, like, the woman and the damsel in distress, and that it's not, you could create a Mario game where that is not the case. I mean, I guess, like, Super Mario Sunshine in some respects.
Yeah, and I mean, even Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario USA, I mean, like, that allows you to play as the princess. And I know, I had a lot of friends that were girls growing up, and, they would always play as the princess, because, like, of course you would. And the game doesn't, you can build a Mario conflict that doesn't revolve around someone having to be rescued.
And I think, like, it is instructive to look at Splatoon as an example of Splatoon is created and by a new generation of Nintendo developers, of a younger generation of Nintendo developers, and is revered, and rightfully revered, as the old guard in Nintendo is. They are from a very different generation.
Absolutely.
And especially
from a very socially conservative country.
Yeah, like a different generation in a very, like, culturally different country. And so they're probably not even, if you approached Shigeru Miyamoto with, like, this idea that, like, I don't know that he's ever thought about it before. The idea that, like, maybe Princess
never thought
Peach,
about it in those terms.
Never thought about it in those terms. I think
ditto, like, like, native, versus, like, the companionship, for Pikmin. Like, he's probably never thought about the Pikmin as having their own society, their own culture, worthy of elevating itself outside of Olimar's intervention.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a huge hope, or maybe not a huge, but there was a very vocal hope that Breath of the Wild would include a female Link.
Yeah.
Or at least the option to play as a female Link. And again, there's no...
And we're not talking about Linkle here.
Right. And, but even then, like, Linkle, like, including a character like that. And again, it would not change the narrative of a Legend of Zelda game in a, like, impactful way. But I just don't think it's anything that they're really... that they're aware of.
I mean, the thing is, I don't think it would change it in an impactful way for two guys, right?
Oh, no.
But I think if I was a if I was me and 8 and a woman, I wouldn't be a woman if I was 8. I would be a girl. But I think I would be excited and like feel good about my ability to play the game.
I'm sorry when I say like an impact, like it wouldn't change it in an impactful way. I mean that like there's no reason not to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay,
that's what I mean.
Sorry.
Is that that's
saying.
what I mean. Is that like whether Link is male or female has no bearing on the narrative.
Right.
Right. You know, it's not.
The game is
not
same.
important for Link to be, and so it's one of those changes that like us being aware of it. We're like, oh yeah, it makes total like, yeah, why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah. It's interesting. We keep kind of we're both doing it, steering back into like the gender question and like who's in distress.
Mm-hmm.
But Robin's question is so specific. I think maybe that's why we're broadening it to gender and damsel in distress, is that there's so many more examples of it, and so like easier fixes. Whereas like, would you want a game about the Pikmin? Would you want a game just about the Blob? Would a Blob and his boy be a better? I actually do think that's a more clever title.
I mean, it's the Peabody and Sherman.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Shermanization of it. But yeah, I mean, I guess to answer specifically this question, I don't find it problematic.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting point, and you know, like I had never thought about it in that context.
Mm-hmm.
But given that, no, I think as presented, it's acceptable, and I don't think it's one of those like shameful things where we're like, oh, nobody should play this game.
Right. It's not Custer's Revenge.
Yeah,
example.
Exactly. But I do think that I would love to see. I would absolutely play a Blob game. I would absolutely play a Blob and his boy game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Robin, no kidding. I don't think we should be surprised that E.T. is a more successful narrative than A Boy and His Blob. Right? Right?
Right.
I think so. Mark, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. We've gone long, but hey, you are waiting in line at the polls.
Right.
Maybe still. Who knows? Historic day and whatnot. So thank you for listening to us gab on for so long. I've had fun. Mark, have you had fun?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to follow us on Twitter. We are at NinCart Society. You can check out our Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. If you have a second, we'd love for you to come on over to iTunes and subscribe and rate and review us. It helps out the show's visibility. And while you're doing that, you can check out some other What's a Creative podcast network shows. We're a part of that network and we're proud to be part of it. So if you like what you heard here, it is likely that you will find other things that you like there. And also, if you like mine and Mark's opinions on stuff, you can find our reviews of comic books on retconpunch.com. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can find more of 8-Bit Betty's music on 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. My name is Patrick Ellers for Mark Mitchell. Thanks for listening.
What's a Creative Podcast Network?